Hi Cancer, I have a video for you. This is about the Jupiter transit through the sign of Capricorn, which is your opposite sign. And this is occurring from December 2nd, 2019 until December 18th of 2020. So you can see that this is a fairly long transit of just over a year. And Jupiter is the planet that brings luck and more opportunities to you. And in the seventh house, this is in the area of committed partnership. The reason that this can be really wonderful is not only can it be great for personal relationships, especially I would say a romantic one where you are looking to settle down with somebody. This could be the year that you do it. But even for clients, the seventh house is one-on-one relationships, and this can also be good for that. Jupiter just adds positivity and abundance to a particular house and situation. If you own your own business, this can mean more clients if Jupiter expands your client base. And one thing I want to mention as well is that we have Uranus, which is the planet of surprises, unexpected things, innovation, technology. In Taurus, a fellow Earth sign, and for you, this is in your 11th house of hopes and wishes, but also of technology, because Uranus rules that house. So what this means when you have that trine, at least especially I should say, in the early transit times of Jupiter, when it will be in the early degrees of Capricorn, is that I guess I'm thinking in terms of how far Uranus is going to go in 2020. I'm not going to get too involved in the degrees, but we'll just assume that it's a trine for the duration of the year. That's that's more of a technical issue, but that trine can indicate having clients that are based internet based, where you're dealing with them online versus in person, and just gaining new clients that way as well. Because the aspect is a trine, it's going to be easy to do this, effortless. Of course, I shouldn't say effortless, like 0% effort on your part, but you know what I mean. And this can help to gain clients because you don't have to make time for them, in person. It's just like it can really expand your client base, maybe even in a short time, if you figure out a strategy that works, that allows you to promote yourself online. Now let's talk about your love life. For those of you who are married, I was just reading something that I thought was very interesting online from the darkpixieastrology.com, which is a great site. And they were talking about, I'll just read exactly what it says here. They were saying that you could actually get divorced during this transit. But what they were saying is that this is something that would be, on the flip side, you could end a relationship during this transit, but it's one that hasn't been good for you and you're glad to be rid of them. So I found that very interesting because I would not necessarily think so. I would have assumed that this is more of an attraction to seventh house matters than kind of like letting go of them. Although I can see what they mean, because if Jupiter brings luck to your marriage sector, your committed partnership sector, and you have been wanting to leave a relationship but just haven't had the courage, or like the gumption, I guess that's courage, right? To be able to do so, this is the time when you feel very positive about your actions and you can take the lead, or something along those lines. I also believe, though, that it can strengthen a relationship. And I want to talk about what has already been in this house and how that may have really impacted committed relationships in a deep way. Pluto has been here since January of 2008. And this is the time in the reading where I have to say this will vary depending on your degree of sun sign or rising sign, because all charts are not created equal. But in general, I use the general transits just to keep it simple. And generally speaking, since 2008, Pluto has been in that marriage sector, that relationship sector, and that could have brought up already in the past almost 12 years as I record this, a lot of unpleasant emotions that were buried within yourself or in the other party or both of you to the surface. I would say especially if there was some kind of an event, like a traumatic event that occurred when you were together that you never quite dealt with. For instance, when a couple loses a child, whether it be like a miscarriage or a child that has already been born, that can be something where they just shut down, they don't talk about it, but then later on it comes to the surface. And in some cases the couple will split up, fairly soon afterwards, because they just can't deal with, maybe they're blaming each other for the loss, or who knows. But it can bring other people together. And this is kind of what I'm getting at with Pluto, because Pluto has the tendency to dredge things up for the purpose of transformation in the form of release that purges, that purging effect. And it's not uncommon, even among couples that have a relatively healthy relationship, to maybe shut down over certain issues that are very sensitive to them and not fully talk about them. And then at some point, and I'm talking about this particular transit, is the perfect time when these things may come up. Now, like I said, Pluto has a very long transit, altogether 15 years. So it's not necessarily something that's continuous. If it makes aspects to other planets in the chart, then that can increase the likelihood of, certain times being hot spots when these things are coming up. But in any case, this can actually be very good for Jupiter to enter here, because it kind of lightens the atmosphere. Because another heavy, there's actually like 3 heavies that are in this sector before Jupiter gets there. Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node. Saturn in the seventh house can indicate that there are some sort of, I don't know if we would call them the paring down in the relationship. Saturn doesn't like excess. So if one person in the relationship, maybe both people, are doing things that threaten the relationship, like for instance, if they have outside activities that take time away from the relationship, if the relationship is superficial in some way, who knows, there may be some restrictions created so that the people are forced to deal with the relationship on a stripped down level. So that could, run the gamut of how that would manifest. Sometimes when people get together and they have children, those children are a buffer where they kind of keep the two people from actually having to interact at a deep level. And this kind of comes about coincidentally, especially at a certain juncture when the relationship may already be kind of stale, where the two people have exhausted their ability to be truly interested in one another. Maybe their relationship was based more on sexual attraction or other factors, especially if they got married or moved in together because they had children. So it wasn't like that pull wasn't really about something truly romantic. It was, or just like a meeting of the minds. It was more that sense of duty, which, by the way, Saturn represents. So Saturn can create a lot of obligations where the people feel like they have to be together because the children are still young enough, or other factors maybe that are going on in other areas of life, maybe like even financial, where they are better off living together than apart for economic reasons, but the love may not be there. However, I will say that if Saturn tests the couple, and they have a basically strong union, they will emerge intact and stronger than ever. So it's not saying that Saturn will destroy relationships when it's in the seventh house, but it will likely test them in some way through a lack of, through more serious, I would say, especially through some sort of obligation that they have to fulfill together. Maybe that also puts stress on the relationship. So it might even be perhaps if an example is that as I record this, Mars is in Libra, and Libra is your fourth house of home and family, the house that Cancer rules. It's forming a square to the seventh house, where Saturn is. And that can create these obligations or this kind of conflict in the home, maybe even like renovating a home. And that's putting kind of like stress on the marriage, because one person wants to renovate the home, the other one doesn't like all the chaos that's ensuing. That's just an example. So, and you may have natal planets in the fourth house that are squaring off to the transing Saturn in the seventh. And, creating those sense of obligations that feel oppressive from the home front, okay? Same thing with the 10th house of career, which is Aries for you. Recently, you had you had Uranus in Aries for 7 years. Now it's now it has left that house. It's in the 11th house. Chiron is in your 10th house, but let's talk about what Uranus in the 10th house might have been. Maybe you had a lot of career fluctuations, or just chaos, and it created a lot of instability. Maybe it affected your finances because there was so many unpredictable elements that occurred, and that affected your marriage. So that is happening. Saturn is there, but Saturn is leaving the 7th house on March 24th and going into the 8th in Aquarius. And so there are only going to be like a few months where Jupiter is there with Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node. The South Node in the 7th house can be an influence for Cancer of your karmic past that tempts you with its familiarity. And how it might manifest for you is because your North Node is in your sign right now and will be until, I believe it's April or May 5th of 2020, something like that. So another approximately 6 months of the North Node in your sign. That is in the 1st house. Right now, Cancers must honor themselves. And I personally know of a Cancer individual who left a long, long-term marriage. And I am still in shock because I never saw it coming. Never, ever, ever. These people have grandchildren. I mean, it was really sad to me. But when I think about it, I think how brave this person was. Because they also have other inner planets in Cancer. Cancer is so domestic and so devoted that for them to leave had to take a lot of guts. But this is that kind of energy where you feel like I have to take care of myself. Cancer is one of the biggest caretakers in the zodiac, naturally, not out of obligation because you want to. And you can easily lose yourself when you are doing that on a regular basis. Cancer is a sign of the mother, but even if you're a male Cancer, you can have those mothering, nurturing qualities, which differ from the opposite sign, Capricorn, the archetype of the father, but the father is not associated with nurturing. And, again, these are not hard and fast rules that are gender-based. They are just talking about energetically the provider, the person who is providing the resources, which is a form of nurturing too. It may not be like as personal, but it still matters. It still has its place. So when you are oriented to be like that, it can get to the point where you lose yourself and lose your own goals, your own dreams. So this is definitely a time to not fall into that habit of codependency. Not talking about just neglecting other people, but overdoing it and really focusing on what you want, especially in the next 6 months. Because then it's going to go into your 12th house. It goes in a clockwise motion, so it goes to the sign before it, and it's going to go into Gemini, which is your 12th house, and this will be a more spiritual area. So all the lessons that you've learned about honoring yourself can be taken to an even deeper level. And so needless to say, you've had a lot going on when it comes to relationships as far back as a dozen years. And I think you will see your first signs of relief in a big way when Saturn leaves at the end of March of 2020. And then you have, Jupiter there. And especially, well, yeah, and then when the South Node leaves too, because the karmic connection with this transit in the seventh house could be in the form of things coming up for you, maybe with this particular person or these one-on-one relationships that have been a pattern for you and that you need to kind of like eradicate from your life. And I would just guess that they would have something to do with the ability to say no, the ability to pursue your own interests without feeling guilty, and things along those lines. Autonomy, because that's what the first house represents, and a sense of being assertive. Because sometimes people who lack assertive qualities, they become aggressive because they feel like the only time that they can get their needs met is by being angry and by pushing it. And cancers can get angry. You can, and you can push things too when you want to, but then it becomes aggression, not assertion. So I guess what I'm getting to is that you can really expand the concept of what relationship really means. I always think of Jupiter in terms of freedom, maybe because it rules Sagittarius, my sun sign, and it's all about freedom for Sagittarius. So with Jupiter, I think that's what expansion really is. It gives you more opportunities so that you don't feel stuck in life. You don't feel trapped. And if you are in a basically good relationship, you may evolve into something where there is more wiggle room for both people, where you have the freedom to do things, maybe like a sticking point has been traveling alone, or one person perhaps wanting to socialize without the other person. These are, I think, perfectly reasonable requests if the relationship is basically sound. If it's not, that could be a sign of problems, obviously. It's not like a black and white matter, but you may feel like your relationship goes into a new level if it's a long-term relationship where you are, you have like a new chapter in your life as a couple. And it's a positive one. Jupiter is a positive influence. It gives positive vibes. There are positive thoughts attached to wherever it goes. So relationships, a more expansive idea of the idea of relationship. But here's the other thing. If you are dating somebody, this may be the time when they pop the question, or you do, or if you're not getting legally married, you are committing to living in the same space together. But if you are getting married, you may be planning a major wedding. That would certainly be a lucky time to get married in the next year if you're already involved with somebody. I would never advocate, okay, you met somebody yesterday, go to Vegas tomorrow. But, if you've been dating somebody, that might be a great time for a committed relationship. And planning a wedding, that's one thing we have to talk about with Jupiter, is the possibility of excess. So you might become bridezilla. You might become somebody who is planning this, maybe your wedding plans become more and more bloated, expanded, over the top. So you might have to rein it in, because you when Jupiter is there, you may feel this need for excess. And there was something else. Oh, I wanted to also mention a couple of Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions that are occurring in this particular house. One of them will be in March, from March 29th to April 5th, and this is the exact conjunction at 24 degrees of Pluto, and this is not the only time when, I mean, these dates are not the only times when a conjunction will occur. Even if the planets are 1 or 2 degrees apart, that would still be considered an conjunction, or even more. I mean, sometimes the orbs are wider than that, up to 10 degrees I've seen. But I'm always interested in exact conjunctions, because I feel that there might be some symbolism there in terms of the alignment happening in that, exact degree. And then there's going to be one in November when both planets have retrograded and gone direct, but this one is at 22 degrees of Capricorn. That is a master number. It's a master builder number, 22. So I like that one as well. And that's from November 8th until the 13th. And during these conjunctions, you're bringing together the planet of luck and expansion with the planet of power. And it can be, on a philosophical level where you're really understanding and feeling a sense of empowerment in regards to your relationship with another person. If you think about it, being in relationship in a close, proximity to somebody, but in that intimate type of relationship with one other person, can bring up a lot of stuff, and it can actually make people feel quite insecure. That's the irony of it. So this can be a time when you're able to be in relationship and still maintain a sense of power. And this is going to be a theme for you in general in 2020. Also, given the North Node being in your first house for almost half of the year. So you're going to still be working on issues and attracting situations, Cancer, of independence. But if you are coupled, or if you're planning to take your relationship to the next level, you can do so without feeling as if you're not able to take care of yourself or honor yourself at the same time. You will be able to. And that's the beauty of it. Okay, that's what I have for you, Cancer. I hope that you receive something positive from this. I think this is going to be a great Jupiter transit for all of us in various ways. And if you would like to look at 2020 with me with a natal chart interpretation, I have a transits just purely talking about the trends, but I also have a natal chart interpretation which goes into the nitty-gritty of what you came into this life as a cosmic blueprint for this incarnation. Please check me out, rainandmoonastrology.com, and the link is below. Take care. Bye.